Hello and welcome to the Life Wisdom Podcast. Today we have with us Rashida Black. And Rashida is a licensed clinical social worker. She's a psycho-spiritual holistic therapist in San Diego with a focus on addiction, trauma, and identity, and an emphasis on empathy and compassion. She is also a classical harpist. So, here on the Life Wisdom Podcast, we believe that life is our greatest teacher. We invite a variety of people to share their life stories and lessons. And because that wisdom is priceless treasure worth sharing with family, friends, and the world. So, with that, let's welcome Rashida Black.
Hello, it's wonderful to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So you've been on a very interesting path. I've seen, the variety of things that you do is quite fascinating. But let's start from the beginning. What got you started?
On which path?
Well, you're a harpist as well as a therapist. Which of them came first? How's that?
I suppose chronologically, I was a musician before I became a clinician, yes.
Okay.
It started me on that path. As a kid, growing up in the 80s, I was influenced by cartoons, and Looney Tunes was, of course, reigning supreme at that time. So I watched a lot of Bugs Bunny, and in one particular episode, maybe a couple, but in one that I remember, he played the harp. And I thought, wow, what instrument is that? That is beautiful. I love that. And I was just so drawn to it.
I think this needs to be on Disney or something, because who would have thought that you would be inspired by the cartoons to play the harp? Amazing.
It's just the music. The classical music was, of course, the most prevalent music played in a lot of non-speaking, cartoons at the time. But film music, there's just so many different types of instrumental music. And at that time, classical music had a character, it had a life of its own. And the characters didn't need to speak because the music did all of the animating the characters, as well as their facial features and everything else that was cartoony. But I was just so enthralled audibly by this sound and by all of the emotion that comes along with instrumental music. So I started to develop an ear through watching cartoons, and then visibly I saw my instrument.
Yeah. And how old were you when that happened, that impact?
I was 6, and then by the time I was 7, my mother had found a harp teacher, and I started taking lessons.
Wow. And then from what I've heard from you earlier, you went on to really excel in it, and you started performing, and you went a long ways with it, didn't you?
I did. I eventually got a degree in music from New England Conservatory in Boston. It's one of the oldest music conservatories in the country. And I had an amazing experience. My teacher at the time was Ann Hobson-Pilot, who was the Boston Symphony principal harpist. And she'd been in that position. She retired from that position after 40 some odd years. So just a long time for especially a Black woman to be in a major symphony orchestra. So she was my inspiration. She was my role model. And I grew a lot with that instrument during that time.
You were performing as well on the stage like that?
Oh, I was performing not only just in orchestras, which I loved, but also as a soloist. And then most harpists have wedding season and we're gig workers, and Ritz Carlton, just, a lot of different places where you would love to see a beautiful instrument.
How old were you when you were doing those kind of gigs?
Since I'd started playing so young, I just was gigging the entire time, really. And
so what, at 8, at 9?
While doing competitions at that time, I won an international harp competition in Ireland when I was 10. And there were just a lot of different both competitions and other recitals and performance opportunities the entire time.
Reminds me of the Jackson brothers, right? Michael Jackson and his brothers, and they were all there, like real young and doing their thing. But this is such an advanced skill. It's, the harp is not an easy instrument, but you really took it a long way. All right, so then what happened?
Well, then there were a lot of other complications that came along with being a musician. And I was not really prepared for a lot of that. Most of us growing up are not. We are trying to learn our different coping skills and survival strategies, and some of them are adaptive and some are maladaptive. And a lot of that is predicated on our environment and our influences. And so I didn't necessarily learn all of the positive coping skills that I needed to deal with some of the issues that come up as a musician, like perfectionism or performance anxiety. And
Yeah, so perfectionism, that can definitely lead to a great deal of anxiety and never feeling good enough. So how did you cope with that?
well, a lot of different ways, of course. Most of us will either hide from it or try to avoid it. And I would practice even more and just really think that perfection is something that is attainable, obviously, because then it wouldn't be expected if it wasn't.
How extreme did that get?
Crippling, I would say. And
Wow.
there were definitely moments where I would have panic attacks and what now seem to be nervous breakdowns, where I was just in crying fit and a lot of shame about not being perfect, and then guilt for any mistakes that I would make.
Did it add to things that you were a person of color? Did that add to it too?
A lot of that factored in, which I didn't know directly at that time, but mostly surrounded by white and Asian musicians, mostly
Right,
white.
right.
And so I didn't look like I belonged.
Yeah.
And
It's all the more you've got to really prove yourself. You've got to really show your worth. You all that factors in, doesn't it?
there was a lot of overproving, right, and having to be extraordinary instead of maybe just as good as. Right? It had to overcompensate based on race. That's what it felt like. Yes.
Okay. And so, with all of that going on, what happened next?
Well, in college it had reached, I would say, a pinnacle, and the people around me were experimenting with alcohol and other drugs, and maybe they'd done it in high school. That was not my experience. In high school, I was very straight edge and a little bit of a goody two shoe, and but still with a lot of the burgeoning mental illness, like the anxiety and the depression that came from the perfectionism and the panic attacks. So then my environment said, well, this is how we deal with it. This is, how you should deal with it. This is what we're doing. So I started to get more into drugs and alcohol in order to self-regulate, right? In order to moderate my mood, in order to calm my nerves. I would sometimes, Rohit, get so nervous that my hands would shake on my instrument and my legs were shaking on the pedals.
Wow.
And it was so disruptive to my system, on my breath, and I would start dissociating, and it was just.
Isn't it amazing that the very thing we take to regulate us ends up dysregulating us? The very thing we use to cope now starts creating its own drama and its own, chaos within us and dependence and all of that. And now we're not able to do without it. And now we're such a mess in every way. So now you've gone from the anxieties that you were having earlier, perfectionism, et cetera, to what? What was the mental state at that time?
Well, when we start taking substances, we initially start and it works. And so then we continue taking it. But then
Right.
there is a switch, right? Because our brain mechanism associated with whatever that chemical is, our brain starts to change. And then, of course, our body starts to change with the chemical dependency as well. And and as those changes were happening, we convince ourselves that if we take a different amount, more, or a different substance, that we can continue to have the same, let's call them positive effects that we previously had. And that type of denial, right, is
Mhm.
what is that leads to addiction.
Right. Right.
So as I
You
was
keep
getting,
chasing that state, and then now it keeps eluding you.
that's right.
The fact that you're here sharing this is such an incredible thing, just so heartwarming, and takes so much of vulnerability, and it takes so much of courage to come forth. You're a therapist, you're there helping people. Has that impacted your work as well? Has that
Well,
helped you help people, in other words?
yes. So as I was moving through all of this, I'm unwittingly taking note of what I'm doing, what I'm experiencing.
Right.
And then in my 20s, by the time my late 20s, quite honestly, by the time I said I really in earnest need a lot of help with this, I can't do it on my own. I'd tried to stop, and then because I didn't have the skills to replace what I needed the drug for, right? Then I just kept going back. It was a vicious cycle. So by the time I really started to get help, um, I was still taking note of what I was doing, why I was doing it, and then of my healing process. And then my first therapist at the time, she was so influential, just this wonderful clinical social worker. And and she influenced me, I think, to become to not only see that I was self-healing and that I am a healer, but also to want this for other people too, especially my community, my artists.
Was there a real turning point at that in all of that?
I think eventually most of us will just get tired of ourselves.
Mm,
Addiction cycle comes along with a lot of things, lying, hiding, sneaking, and the behaviors are difficult to maintain.
right.
So eventually, since I didn't know how to stop it, I had two non-fatal suicide attempts, right? Because I wanted something to end, but it's
Mm,
the whole thing. My entire life had to end.
yeah.
And since those were non-fatal, it felt maybe like divine intervention. And
Mm,
so I thought, well, if I can't die, then I'm gonna have to figure out how to live.
mm.
And
That's such an interesting statement you just made. Since I can't die, then I might as well learn how to live. Wow. What if I was to share with all our listeners that that is the truth for all of us? We cannot die, we will not die. And since that is the case, we might as well learn how to live. I love that piece of wisdom you just brought up. Incredible. Thank you.
I think culturally, most of us just kind of go along with how our parents lived or how our community lives, and we don't necessarily live intentionally. But that's one of the beautiful things about sobriety, about recovery, is the intentionality. I get to be now self-directed. I get to say, this is what's best for me. And I find purpose. There's a reclamation of life and learning how to navigate the world with a clear mind and a clear heart that comes with recovery.
So there seem to be three things: there's a sense of purpose, there's a sense of regaining control over your life, and there's a sense of, I don't know, somewhere bringing back, no longer feeling out of control, but actually having a sense of direction even in your life. Would you say those are the three things that you found? Sense
Exactly
of
that.
purpose, a sense of direction, a sense of control over your life.
Yes.
Wow. And how did that happen?
Um, well, there's various techniques that I needed to address my own traumas, and you brought
Mm,
up a couple of them: the racial trauma
yeah.
of the usually the only person of color or the only Black person in an entire orchestra of 100 people.
Yeah.
So I was feeling lonely and alienated, and I didn't really register that while I was a child or in my adolescence. But
Mm.
the impact of it was felt, even if I didn't have the vocabulary to describe it. And so I was trying to manage too many things on my own. And as I was in therapy and started to discover who I was and that I had a lot more strength and perseverance and resilience than I ever imagined, then was learning tools and skills that I needed in order to really live my life. And those were the essential skills, the self-awareness and the emotion regulation and seeking support.
When we were first, getting connected with on this topic, and you said something about learning to value your life and understand your worth, that was a crucial piece. And then there was something about believing you deserved a better life. So there seemed to be some really key pieces that emerged, in terms of your worth, in terms of what you deserved, in terms of who you are. Tell me a little about that.
When we think about our worth, our value, it's usually determined outside of us. It's external. So someone telling me, let's say as a musician, how much they're willing to give me for my skill or how much they think I'm worth, right? And
Mhm.
then I was oftentimes told, well, this will just be a good experience for you. We're not really going to pay you anything. I'm like, well,
Mm.
excuse me. I play a very expensive instrument. My
Yeah.
education costs a lot of money. But then it's, oh, well, if I don't allow them to define me and my value, then will I work? And there's all of this self doubt, all of this fear. And I think that has a lot to do with our identity, especially when we are so young in certain profession. We equate what we do with who we are.
Right.
That to me is both unfortunate and also incredibly profound.
I think a lot of people do that even, and later on in life. It's not just when they're young, but especially as they get older, they even more so begin to equate what they do with who they are. This sense of I am what I do. When we introduce ourselves to someone, we say, "Oh, I'm a so and so. I'm a banker. I'm a lawyer. I'm a therapist. I'm a this. I'm a that." But is that really our identity? And how does that damage us? And what did you find that helped you instead of that kind of limited
Well,
definition?
with that limited definition, I didn't realize that I was incurring a lot of different trauma. And
Mm.
so some of the tenets of trauma are that we feel responsible, we feel unprepared, and we feel powerless. And
Mm.
so being voiceless or feeling immobile, um, we it has a tendency to take over. I so healing trauma, it just requires deep introspection. It requires confronting painful emotions, and it requires rebuilding our self-confidence, our self-image, our self-concept, and saying,
Hmm.
believe that
Yeah.
we can and we should invest in ourselves. So that's the deserving part.
Right. But even our identity, I find that as long as our identity is placed in things or other, it's in the hands of other people, or in terms of what we do or what we have, then it's always fragile. But the moment we claim our identity at a deeper level as who I am, at the deepest level, soul, if you want to call it that, who I am at the core of me, not even my body, not even my mind, not even my skills. I'm not defined by any of that. And once we go that deep, then it becomes unshakable. I don't know if that you relate to that, or what do you think of that?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I have discovered throughout my sobriety and also just in working with others who are going through various life transitions or rediscovering who they are or even discovering who they are. And that's the identity piece that I focus on sometimes. It's um, it's really like an awakening and it's powerful, right? To self-define, to say, um, this is not only how I feel right now when I'm feeling my best self, this is how I feel, but also this is who I see myself as. And so, when I say things like I'm in recovery, to me, that means that I am actively, intentionally healing. And so I will always be in recovery. And I'm really proud of that. That is going to be different than other people's definition of their abstinence or their sobriety. But I now see myself as a healer. And it doesn't mean that I am fully healed at any point, but that I am actively, consciously working on it every day.
So
For
help
that
me
sense.
understand and help others also understand, what does healing actually mean? What are we healing?
For me, it's about a little bit of unlearning, right? So
Unlearning, okay.
some of the things that maybe we were um, raised to believe or conditioned, programmed, however
Mm-hmm.
you want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that reclaiming of who we actually are, not who other people need us to be, want us to be, wish we were, but who are we showing ourselves we are? I feel like a huge part of it.
Emotional regulation. Did that play a big part? Because I know you were using substances to regulate. So, what did you learn beyond that? What were some of the tools you gained? Maybe others could also benefit and learn that, hey, there is a whole journey outside of addiction in which you learn to have real tools, that the drug or the substance or alcohol, whatever it is not the tool, is not going to really help, but what you need are actual tools that you can work with and that be there for you whenever you need. So what kind of things did you come across when it came to emotional regulation, and how did that help you?
It's going to sound so cheesy when I say it, but I had to learn how to breathe. I was not, there were so many times where I would either be on stage performing and knew some difficult passage was coming up. And so I would hold my breath and just like hunker down and kind of force my way through it, and I was disconnected from my breath, which means that I was disconnected from my body. And I was not oxygenating my brain. Nothing was, breathing. So I think either both connecting to my breath was really helpful. And even now, I'll say that when we use our senses, we are fully in our body, which means that we're not in anxiety, which is future oriented. We are
Mm-hmm.
not in regret, which is past oriented. We're not dissociating and on some other dimension. I have no idea where people go when they dissociate, right? But we are right here
Right.
using our body, using our senses to be fully present. And so it's that mindfulness piece that I found to be both the practice of it challenging. I was so
Right.
used to disconnected.
Before you go to mindfulness, hold a second. I want to really hone in on your point about the breath, because and how the breath connects you with your body. It's almost like it's a lever. You pull that lever and boom, you're in, right? And it brings you in out of your head and into your body. So I think
Mhm.
it's very powerful. In all forms of meditation, the first thing they teach you is how to breathe properly. And begins with that diaphragmatic breathing, then deep breathing, and then you learn how to do that. And then you learn how to do that under different circumstances. It's not just that when you meditate, you breathe deeply, but that you do it throughout your life, that you do it in various situations, various circumstances. And in that way, you learn to stay centered and in charge of this whole body mind organism. Now receives a certain kind of balancing that occurs when you're connected to your breath. There's something very profound that happens. I can go into, there's a lot of detail on this subject, but great. I'm so glad you started with that. And then you said you went on to mindfulness, and that really helped you. Tell us more about that.
When I'm working, especially with teens, I will ask them to breathe into their knees and
Mm-hmm.
really make those kneecaps swell with
Okay.
their breath, right? So that they're getting a deep breath. And if I say breathe into your diaphragm, most of them don't know what I'm talking about. So I like that, breathing deeply, but also when we're taking in that deep breath, what do you smell? And so that's what connects us to our senses so that we can be fully present. One of the probably the number one grounding technique that most therapists use, especially when people have anxiety, is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Mm.
So 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can hear near and far, 2 things that you can smell, 1 thing that you can taste. And so that really helps for that mind body connection so that we are fully in our body and fully present in our surroundings. And I
So,
find that
talking about presence, presence being a very powerful form of emotional regulation. Why does presence work so much? And what does it really do? What is your experience of presence? And, how does it help with anxiety? And what does it mean even?
right. Well, like I said earlier, anxiety is future oriented, right? I
Mm.
usually say to people, you're time traveling right now. I need you to be right here with me because in the here and now, you're with someone who cares about you deeply. You're in a safe space. Take stock of where you are right now.
Yeah.
And that is what I find to be so powerful in the here and now. We're we're choosing, hopefully, to be in safe, calm spaces.
Hmm.
And when we take stock of who we are, use our senses to be fully present, that mindfulness piece, right? In the here and now, then there is no anxiety. Anxiety lives in the future. It can't hang out in the present. So we're not experiencing anxiety, which is where we need to be.
So, in the
Um,
here and now, there is actually just what? There's two people talking in this moment. There may be somebody who's watching. So that's the here and now. In the here and now, you've got your eyes are open, your mouth is moving, you're breathing. And so as you come in touch with what is happening right now, this very microsecond, you realize that 99.9% of your anxieties actually aren't happening and may not even happen. They're right here, right now. None of that is happening.
that's right. The anxieties are about the what ifs. They're about the worst case scenarios. They're
Right.
somewhere else that is
Yes.
full of imagination, narrative, and story. But let's not create those right now. Let's just be right here with each other, right?
If you take your whole life experience that you've had and now the work that you're doing with people and helping them and helping them through their challenges, what can you distill out of there? What would be the message that what is the learning you're taking away? Let's start with that.
Each of us has within us the strength that we need in order to deal with whatever is happening in our lives. We may not have the skills, the tools. We can learn those things, but innately, we have what we need in order to survive without numbing our pain or without escaping our reality. And so I would just encourage everyone to try to notice even the small wins. Allow you overcoming challenges and struggles to show you just how strong you really are.
Yeah.
And
There's something that you said, numbing.
yeah,
Without numbing. It seems to be that our society, most people have learned this art expertly, how to numb. How to be able to drink your way there, how to take drugs and get there, how to watch TV and get there, how to numb with shopping, how to numb with doing, how to numb with being busy, how to numb with all these activities. And yet, all that numbing does is it suppresses, right? It doesn't let you feel what's really going on inside you. How
it's really,
scary is it to feel what's going on inside you? Is it really terrible?
it can feel terrible.
Okay. But
Um,
can it eat you up? Can it kill you? Can it destroy you?
and so feeling, I want to validate people's feelings because they're real. But I think our lexicon is that there are good feelings and bad feelings, positive feelings and negative feelings. And this is not the case. It's almost like karma. It's neutral. It's not good or bad. And so
Exactly. This
think
idea
of
of being positive, this idea of feeling good, I think this has led us down a really terrible sort of rabbit hole of additional layers of suffering. Because if everything is supposed to feel good and everything is supposed to be good and things are supposed to work out the way we want, so we're just supposed to be positive, 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 that creates a huge problem. Because in reality, nothing is just positive all the time, and no one feels good all the time. And maybe we feel good a whole lot less than we feel bad. But is it okay to feel bad? What is your experience?
well, a wide range of feelings is the healthiest. So I'm going to feel a lot of different emotions and different emotional states. And any given amount of time, that is healthy and normal. I'm not supposed to be happy all the time. That is not actually good, right, or normal. It's one frozen state. And it's not even the best one.
So imagine, I got this idea right now as you were talking. Imagine if while playing the harp or any musical instrument, all you played was one note. Ding, 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 ding. And you just played that one note. It would be so boring, right? It's having the range of notes. It's having the inflection within those notes that creates for music, doesn't it? Right?
Mhm.
But just
Yeah.
imagine now comparing music to life. If all we had was one single emotion, happy, 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 right? Then we would be so artificial and fake. It's having those, it's just like if there was only light right now, there would be no shadows. Then you wouldn't see depth. There would be no depth of perception. If you tried even with light, just shine a really bright light on somebody, they'd get washed out, right? Same with music, same with life. There seems to be beauty in the range of colors, in the range of experiences, in the range of emotions. And that beauty is something that we're not taught to explore. So, as you've explored that, has it had an effect on your life as well?
I would say a lot more gratitude, uh, more appreciation for several different states. I can find beauty in maybe more things than I could before. And so if I am with people and then there's moments of solitude, I can appreciate both. I think
Mm.
so. I'm more of an ambivert, so, here or there with people. But as far as my emotions are concerned, I love being able to fully express sadness and cry. And it feels good, just to let that go, to release in that kind of way. And I love to also express through laughter and feel that sense of elation. That's wonderful too, but I can't stay there. It's
Right.
exhausting, actually.
What I find is that a lot of people they'll tend to think about their emotions. And that creates a lot of havoc in our brains. Why did he do this? Why did she do that? What does it mean? They'll try to give meaning. This is all logical brain function. How, why, what? Trying to find meaning, trying to find, interpretation of that. I know he did it because of this, and it's because he doesn't care and because he doesn't love me and this and that. But that's all our logical mind, and it's whipping us up and making the emotion even worse. So my own experience has been that when you go from your head into your body, instead of going in your logical mind, or even just drowning in the emotion, you just allow yourself to feel it and to feel it more in your body. Something very interesting happens. It moves through you. It's like a passing wave. You don't need to get rid of it. You don't need to avoid it. You don't need to be it. You don't need to be engulfed by it. It's simply let it move through you. Feel it in your body. Get out of here and into here. It's such an incredible metaphor. You were using it in the first place as well. Right. So, with that, tell me, what would you then impart as a gift to the world? What would you really, if you had to take the essence of what you've learned, what would you share with people? Is there such a thing? Is that really asking too much?
Well, it feels kind of like a retrospective, and I don't feel like I am I have lived enough life to give you this kind of
But how
answer.
about introspective instead of retrospective?
Hold on, Rohit. Ask me your question one more time in a different way.
What would you like to pass on to others? Because they're going to be in your situation, many people, and they're going to need, a sense of, okay, what do I grasp onto? What's the most important thing to take away from here today? And how can I, also put myself in a better place the way Rashida has done?
Develop and maintain a structured daily routine. That kind of organization is really important. Practice mindfulness, as we've talked about earlier, or various forms of spirituality, right? Whatever to ground and connect you. And then prioritize therapy.
That was good. That was very good. I'll throw in a couple of things that you've told me about earlier, and I'll see if you want to add those on there as well. And some of them were, of course, you mentioned it here as well. Getting a support structure, right? Having people who you can, so the people you hang out with, that's a very important piece. Not underestimating the power of self-belief. You started off talking about that. And resilience. That's another word I love that you'd used in our communication. So yeah, resilience. So resilience is, I take that in terms of what you just said, the ability to bounce back, the ability that no matter how bad things have gone, you can still bounce back. It's never the end. I remember this lovely quote from a movie that I once saw. He says, it's all going to be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, then it's not the end. So I don't know, it's just a silly, corny line, but in a sense, it seems to work, that it's all going to be okay in the end. And it's a kind of way of self soothing. I find myself able to tell myself at times that, hey, it's going to be okay. You don't know how, you don't know when, you don't know where, but it's all going to be okay somehow or other. And I think that if we just have that faith and belief in life, it makes a huge difference.
It does, you're right. So um, when we're numbing, especially with substances, we're not allowing ourselves to make things all right. We're simply removing ourselves instead of giving ourselves the opportunity to make changes. Maybe we feel like we can't make changes. But when we really take that sober look and we do just what you said, then we have the ability to say, this isn't what I want. I'm going to make it better.
Yeah.
And we can be proactive and intentional about that.
Yeah. So instead of giving away our power to a substance or a circumstance, we actually begin the act of reclaiming our power and our ability to make a change. So thanks for bringing out the importance of therapy. I think that really helps in making that change. How can people contact you if they need your support? If they would like your support, where would they go?
Sure. They can find me at Khemura.com. That's KHEMURA.com. And that is my email address, or that's my website. You can also use RashidaBlack.com. That works too. It gets you to the same place.
Okay.
And I would love to speak with people about, maybe helping them to replace some old habits with healthier ones, or build their support network, or develop some coping mechanisms to deal with life's challenges. What I'm here for.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I'll end with a short message for any and all of you that have gone through life experiences, and I know all of us have, and if you've got something you'd like to share with the world, don't hesitate to contact us. The Life Wisdom Podcast is for you, and we'd love to have you on here as well. Rashida, it's been an honor having you here. and so love the work you're doing right now and on the journey you've been through. Would you say that it's all been worth it in the end? All the
I would,
suffering that you had and all the hardship you went through?
because I'm using it to help other people. It is
That's
more
right.
than
That's wonderful. So blessed to have you here. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. All right, with that, we'll end and have a wonderful day. Bye.